Hey everyone, so I'm back. The end times are upon us and we are all in quarantine right now, so I figured I might as well jump back on to YouTube and create some new videos. I have a whole bunch of plant videos planned that I'm going to get to, but right now I thought I would catch up on my recent reads videos. It's been a while, like 3 years since I've done a recent reads video, so I thought I would fill in those years with a couple videos with the stuff that I've been reading in the interim. I don't really know if this microphone is doing anything or works. I got it for my birthday from my sisters. I originally wanted to turn my ebooks into audiobooks because I don't have that option right now. So they got me that, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that, if I need software or I don't know. But let's just get right into the recent reads that I have. Also, just ignore whatever's happening with my hair. We're in quarantine. Okay, I haven't had a haircut. It looks ridiculous. For this recent reads video, I'm gonna kind of loop together series that I've read because it just seems like the best way to talk about the books as a whole. And in this video, I actually have 4 of these books are actually series that I read, so that'll be interesting. The first series that I'm going to talk about is something that I read actually, when did I read this? Almost like 3 years ago. And it's Robin Hobb's The Farseer Trilogy. So this trilogy, which is made up of Assassin's Apprentice, Royal Assassin, and Assassin's Quest, are a high fantasy series set in a kind of medieval world. It follows this boy Fitz, who discovers he's the bastard of the king, and he kind of gets taken into the royal family and discovers that he has all of these magic powers, including the wit, which is sort of like the ability to speak and bond with animals, as well as the skill, which is kind of more of a magic system rather than bonded to like an animal or something like that. This series was incredible. I have always really liked fantasy novels and fantasy series, and I started reading Game of Thrones. Wasn't really that into it. I loved The Lord of the Rings, and I've always kind of had a hit or miss when it comes to fantasy series, but this was an incredible hit. Robin Hobb is like an incredible author. These are all in first person from Fitz's perspective, and just the emotion that Fitz has, like, it's so deep and it's so incredible. And these books just made me like fall in love with Hobb's writing and with Fitz and the character of the Fool. Now, I'm a few more books into this whole series now, but there's this other character who's very important in this universe called the Fool, and the Fool and Fitz kind of form this friendship that's incredibly tight, and at times it verges on a romantic relationship, but it never really gets there. And reading through it and everything, it's a little strange for me because I'm not a big fan of queer baiting, and if you're gonna have queer baiting characters, I think it's a way of just manipulating an LGBT audience, which is very large, into hoping and wanting things that you're really not going to deliver on. And I unfortunately have found that in this series there is a lot of queer baiting, not necessarily in these books. These books are more about Fitz and his kind of discovering who he is, and the threats that go on within the kingdom that he's trying to deal with. So but these books definitely create the underlying relationship between the characters of Fitz and the Fool. It's later books that I take some big issues with, but we'll get to that in a different video. But I definitely would recommend these books. They're incredible novels. Robin Hobb's writing is just is phenomenal, and it's very character driven, and it's very heartfelt. They're some of the best fantasy novels that I've ever read. Okay, so the next trilogy that I'm going to talk about is, I don't know how to say this, C.S. Pacet's The Captive Prince trilogy, and it's made up of Captive Prince, Prince's Gambit, and King's Rising. And this is a LGBT fantasy series that I found out while kind of researching LGBT fantasy book series, because I obviously wanted to, read some. I did not enjoy these. It wasn't about the content. I mean, the content was very gay. It was very gay. There are some scenes in the last book that are basically pornographic, and I was like, holy crap, but this is good. But the problem that I have with it is, number one, the writing. I'm not sure if these are young adult books, because they have some themes that are very not geared toward young adults, but it read like a young adult or even a new reader's fiction. And I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like YA. I don't read it. I've read Harry Potter, and that's probably as far as I go into liking YA. The characters are really flat. They don't really have much depth to them, and even as the books go on, there really isn't any depth to any of these characters. And the world itself felt very poorly fleshed out. Like, it's almost like the author just decided to write a fantasy but doesn't really know anything about fantasy, and kind of was like, here's one kingdom, here's another kingdom, they're gonna have a little conflict, and that's it. And I mean, that's fine, that's all you need for fantasy, but it felt very simplistic overall. The entire thing felt very simplistic, and for that reason, I finished the first one, and I basically had to push myself through the next two because I was just not interested at all. After I had read The Captive Prince, I needed something that wasn't fantasy, just to kind of cleanse my palate a bit, I think. So I read Salinger's Catcher in the Rye. I'd never read this before. I had a friend years ago who she loved this book. It was one of her favorite books. So I finally picked it up and decided to give it a try, and I was pleasantly surprised. I really liked it. It took me a while to get into it. It took me a long time to get into it, and it wasn't until towards the end that I really started to like it. But I'm trying to remember what it's about now, and I can't even remember. I gotta read it again. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I write all of my little things in the cover because why not? So I must have enjoyed it mostly. I couldn't tell you what it's about though. I gotta read it again. So after Salinger, I decided to jump back into fantasy because I had so much of it, and I jumped back in with Mercedes Lackey's The Last Herald-Mage trilogy. This is a big book, but it has all 3 books in the trilogy in here, which you can see there. See here. And so the trilogy is made up of Magic's Pawn, Magic's Promise, and Magic's Price. And just like The Captive Prince, this is a more LGBT geared fantasy. It's better fleshed out. The world is better fleshed out. The fantasy is better fleshed out than the Captive Prince series. But I did not really enjoy this trilogy at all. And I think it had to do with the characters. Because the world itself is really interesting. I found myself very interested in what was going on in the politics and in the world and in the magic systems. But the characters, for me, I don't know. They fell flat. I'm trying to remember what it's even about. Let me read the back. Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't remember any of this. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it, to be honest. And I know that this is a series that's beloved by, a lot of people. I don't know. I think I made the problem of starting off this whole like fantasy phase of my reading with Robin Hobb stuff. I just kind of expected that kind of writing style from everybody else that I was reading, and I shouldn't have, because everybody has their own writing style and their own voice. But Robin Hobb's is just incredible. So the last series that I'm going to talk about in this video that I read was the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. It's 3 books made up of Mistborn, The Well of Ascension, and The Hero of Ages. I started reading this series because my boyfriend at the time recommended it. He said it was really good. He said if I liked fantasy that I would really like this, and I did. It's a good series. It's about a girl named. Okay, this was a long time ago, so I don't even remember what her name is. I can't even get one of these books out. But it's about a girl who has these. You know what? The plot for this is just too difficult to understand. There's like this weird magic where you ingest metals, and depending on the different metals that you ingest, it gives you different abilities, but the world is also crumbling and falling apart and in like this just state of constant decay. And Sanderson is a really great author. Definitely gets across the kind of mood and the tone of the world that they're on, of this Mistborn world. In the last book, actually, The Hero of Ages, I found myself just like weighed down almost by how just dismal the location and the setting was. Like, he did such an incredible job of creating this depth to the location and making it almost like a character itself. So I did like it. It's not one of my favorite fantasy series, and I think honestly it's just because it's not really high fantasy. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not sci-fi, but it's not like traditional fantasy. It's a very different kind of fantasy set in a world where the magic systems are completely different than anything you've ever seen, and the setting is different than anything that we've ever seen. And honestly, that's all great, and it's really well done. It's just I have a very like small niche of books that I enjoy, and so I did like these. It's kind of weird looking back at them now because I spent a lot of time talking about them with that ex, and obviously we're not together anymore. So it's weird. I would like to read more Sanderson eventually in the future, but for now I'm just gonna leave that to the side. And so there you have it. That was my first new recent reads video. I have 2 more coming. Again, they kind of span the years between now 2018, is it? No, it's not 2018. Spanning the years between 2020 and 2018. So all of these I read in 2018, and really, as you could probably tell from the video, I don't remember much about them. So I recommend them. Some of them are great. So I guess check them out. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for watching. If you're new to my channel, I post plant videos on Monday, and on Friday I post videos about writing or reading or photography or whatever interests that I have. As always, you can find my social media links in the description below. As well, you can find the link to my fantasy series, A Chronicle of Crowns, which is currently out on Amazon. Thanks again. Bye!